Hi, welcome everyone. This is the Book Talk Nation chat with Amanda Kyle Williams. If you're just joining us, if you've never joined a Book Talk Nation chat before, I'll tell you a little bit how this will work. It's kind of like an author event in a bookstore. So Amanda's going to talk about her new book, Don't Talk to Strangers. If you haven't ordered a copy of that book, you can do so right here on the Book Talk Nation site. Right to the side of the video window or at booktalknation.com. She'll be signing and personalizing all the copies that are purchased here at booktalknation.com, and then local independent bookstore Eagle Eye Books in Atlanta, Georgia will ship those right to your door. Now, if you'd like the signed and personalized copy, you're going to want to make sure you get that order in by tomorrow night at midnight Eastern Time. That's when the sales will shut down for the signed and personalized orders. In about 20 minutes, Amanda will be answering your questions. Now she'll answer the questions that you submitted ahead of time when you RSVP'd for the event. She'll also answer any live questions that you have, which you can use the chat box right underneath this video window, and you can type in questions for her there. Until then, I'm going to turn it over to our interviewer tonight, who is Doug Robinson. He is the co-owner of Eagle Eye Books. So a big welcome to Doug and to Amanda, and I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate it. Love this opportunity to talk to one of my favorite authors, especially probably my favorite author in the Atlanta metro area. Tag teaming with me today in this interview is Chuck Howell. He is a longtime reader and admirer of Amanda, and he recently finished her last book. So, a few things to say. Summer is here and murder is back, just the way we like it. Chief among the perpetrators, Amanda Kyle Williams. You are an Atlanta crime writer with a strong female protagonist who makes Atlanta and Georgia her beat. You're the author of The Stranger You Seek, Stranger in the Room, and now Don't Talk to Strangers. Before we get started, I'd like to read a passage from The Stranger You Seek. This is one of my favorite passages, and it's basically about Key Street. And Key says, I embraced the South as a child, loved it passionately, and love it still. You learn to forgive it for its narrow mind and growing pains because it has a huge heart. You forgive the stifling summers because spring is lush and pastel sprinkled, because November is astonishing in flame and crimson and gold, because winter is merciful and brief, because cornbread and sweet tea and fried chicken are every bit as vital to a Sunday as getting dressed up for church, and because any Southerner worth their salt says please and thank you. It's soft air and summer vines, pine woods, and fat homegrown tomatoes. It's pulling the fruit right off of a peach tree and letting the juice run down your chin. It's a closeted and profound appreciation for our neighbors in Alabama who bear the brunt of the Bubba jokes. The South gets in your blood and nose and skin bone deep. I am less a part of the South than it is a part of me. It's a romantic notion being overcome by geography. We are all a little starry-eyed down here. We're Rhett Butler and Scarlett O'Hara and Rosa Parks all at once. So that just shows.
I may be a little bit romantic about the region.
Well, that is written very, very beautifully, and much beautifully than most of the crime writers do when they take on the task.
Thank you.
Amanda, you live in Decatur, Georgia.
I do.
I wish you would tell us a little about your background, like where you mostly grew up, your early life, your work experiences, your schooling, etc.
I mostly grew up in the South. I came here in the 60s. I was a little kid, and we were Yankees when we came to the South. But I fell in love with the place. I mean, I was just telling someone today that I'd never seen English ivy and kudzu, and the way cherry blossoms look when they're when there's a gust of wind. And I just thought it was the greenest, most lush, most beautiful place I'd ever seen. I mean, Colorado was beautiful where we came from, but it was different. So I just fell in love with the South right away as soon as I was old enough to choose where I wanted to stay. I wanted to stay here, but there's I was talking about this today too. There's a lot of contrast here that's, I think, inspiring for me as a writer. I remember, when I was a kid, I think it was my first introduction to something that really marked me, and that was racism here in the South. I was on the phone with a little friend of mine. I was maybe, I don't know, 9, 10 years old, and I heard my mother gasp and cover her mouth, and she said that Martin Luther King Jr. had been shot. And so I repeated this to my little friend on the phone, and she repeated it to her mother, and I heard her mother in the background say, "Good, it's about time." And I had never heard anything like that in my life. And maybe because I was young, I had no experience at all with it. And that set in this place that I had fallen in love with seemed so, the contrast was stunning. And it really, I'll never forget it. In the 60s, the South was a volatile place. And so there's a lot of contrast here. There are in the city, this huge, bustling, jagged city, set in this beautiful ivy-colored region. So there's not a lot about the South that doesn't inspire me to feel something. Most of the time, it's positive, and sometimes it's not. I wanted to talk about racism a little bit in this series, but I wanted to do it in sounds funny, in a fun way. I do it through my protagonist, who's Chinese American, and gets to make fun of it. And I wanted to do it in a non-preachy way. So anyway, the South inspires me, and inspires me every day. My neighbor comes out in Daisy Duke in the morning, and the guy's like 250 pounds. So how can you not be inspired by that?
And what about your work experience? Has that influenced your?
God, just name it. My resume is an example of someone that's just incapable of holding a job. There's not a lot that I haven't tried to do, but once I decided I wanted to be a writer, which I was maybe 28 or 30 years old at the time. At that point, it was just about finding work to make a living until I figured out how to get good enough at it to so it would buy the groceries. So I did a lot of things. I painted houses in the summer. I had a dog walking business. I worked with a PI firm, and I was a process server.
Comes out in your a lot, that process server thing. Yes.
That really informed my writing so much, because now Key Street, my protagonist, is doing some of the work that I did back then.
Yes.
So there's not a lot that I haven't done. In 2010, I became a full-time writer for the first time, and that was after about 20 years of practicing. But it was just the right year and the right manuscript and the right protagonist.
Yeah, I find it interesting. The Key Street series are not your first books, right? You wrote other books years previously. I can't remember all of them, of course, but I thought that. And
it's just as well that you can. it's a blessing and a curse when your early works get published, because you want it so bad. You just want it more than anything, and you don't know that you're not very good at it yet. So, but God bless the internet. They're all out there, and they'll never friggin' go away. But the small press books were a great experience for me. It gave me some, when I came to this series, I kind of had an idea about how to do a series. And so there was some good experience in there, and I look back at those books as practice, as practice writing.
Okay. You also have battled dyslexia for, I guess, forever. When you realized you had dyslexia, you battled it since. And do you want to say anything to your fans and readers about that, please?
Sure. I'm dyslexic. I wasn't diagnosed until later in life, and I was 22 when I was diagnosed. And I read my first book cover to cover when I was 23. I could read you a sentence, I could write my name, but when any kind of long text formed for me, like sentences and paragraphs were strung together, I was just absolutely incapable of decoding it. And really, back then, no one knew what dyslexia was. No one knew what was wrong with me. You were either one of the slow kids, or you weren't trying. Dyslexia or learning difficulties were not even on the table. So I was not diagnosed, and as a result, school was hellish for me. I dropped out as soon as I was old enough to do that. I was 16, and I think I left skid marks at that place. And I never went back. It's, you don't hang around the hornet's nest after you've been stung a few times, So I kind of bluffed my way into jobs. I had a vocabulary because my siblings were brilliant, and that's what I did until I was diagnosed, and I learned how to read, and it changed my life. I mean, it changed every way that I felt about myself, and every way that I felt about my chances in the world. And I fell in love with fiction and the idea that people read for pleasure, because reading for me had been a kind of war until then. So I think I was reading about 5 years when I started getting the itch to write, and so I started writing. I think I was 28, and it was practice writing for about 20 years until something clicked, and I found something authentic and original. It took me a long time to do that as a writer. I don't know if it takes all writers that long. I know some writers come right out of the box and they're great. The Tiger's Wife, I think, is an example of a book like that. But it took a long time for me, and I think it's. I spent a lot of my life learning how to bluff and how to conceal. So really getting into something honest and authentic, and really being willing to strip a character down to their flesh and bones and flaws. It took some time for me, but I feel like I'm getting there. Great thing about writing is you're always a student,
Well, Amanda, I was just curious about where you got your inspiration from for Don't Talk to Strangers. As Doug just referenced, I finished reading the advanced copy he was kind enough to let me look at. And I don't want to give too much away here, but I know we recently had an event on Lake Oconee where it was really Southern Gothic and bizarre as far as murder.
brutal, the first one in 10 years.
Obviously, you started writing this before that happened, and they're not the same. But how did you get your inspiration for that?
I was actually up in the Lake Oconee area revising the second book. And I have a friend who has a golf cottage up there on Reynolds Plantation in one of those nice gated communities up there, about a block from where this real-life murder happened. Much later. I think the book was published by then, but or almost. You know, I go into town for supplies, and I come back. This is a borrowed cottage, and I go into town and feel, you know, I'm not one of the locals, and they're nice, but they're reserved. And then I come back to the bazillion-dollar golf cottage neighborhood. Where I'm not one of them either. I don't even golf. I'm just there because it's beautiful, and I'm rewriting a book. And I felt, as beautiful as it was, I felt so totally out of place everywhere I went. And I started thinking about small towns, about how locals pull in, especially in resort areas where there's a sort of ever-changing neighborhood, and what it would be like to put my Chinese American protagonist in the middle of that in an investigation. So that's how Don't Talk to Strangers was born, because I was right there on Lake Oconee. You probably noticed I changed the name of the county and the town. They're fictional because I'd like to keep relations good up there. So I didn't mention the real life town, but I think most of the people that are around there will recognize it. It's lovely. It's just I feel very much an outsider there. So, which ended up inspiring me. Most discomfort has a way of inspiring writers for some reason.
Also, you touched on this just briefly earlier about the racism in the South and how you wanted to bring that up in a sort of fun way. And one of the things that got me interested in your books to begin with was, you know, just without sharing too much information, I happened to be a gay male who grew up in the South. And I always, you know, a lot of times I felt like an alien from outer space, like I was just terminally unique. And, you know, you embrace the things in your books that, and affirm things that are important to me about diversity. And you know, Key has a brother who is gay, and he's black, and he experienced the same things that I did, and he moved to Seattle, and coincidentally, I happen to have moved to Seattle, and then came back to Atlanta. Now, in the new book, he's back here in Atlanta, as I am. So I just very strongly identify with that, and I just wanted to say that I appreciate the diversity in there, and see if you had anything that you'd like to add about how you feel about those things and writing about them in your book.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Not everyone has embraced the diversity. I think I remember reading some reader reviews when the first book hit. Although the reviews were great on the first book, you know, some people were like, "Oh my God, everybody in Atlanta must be gay." But you know what? My protagonist's world looks a lot like my world. I mean, minus the guns. I don't carry a Glock, for the record, but her friends look a lot like my friends and family, and I wanted it to be real in that way. I work real hard on my characters, on their dialogue, on them having a unique voice, so that they're real. I'm so sorry, my dog is like scratching at the door. I got to do it, guys. Excuse me. Come on, Brandon.
We knew that would happen.
Yeah, sorry. There he goes.
Maybe a good time for me to jump back in. It looks like it's about that 20-minute mark, right on
Wow,
time.
it went by so fast.
It does. It flies by.
Yeah.
So it's time for the audience questions now. If you have a question for Amanda, you can go ahead and type it in the chat box, or I believe below this video window, and she will go ahead and answer those live. While we wait for anyone to be the first brave soul to enter the live question, I'm going to go ahead and grab some of the pre-submitted ones for you here.
Okay.
Let's see. This is from Mike Whitney in Hayesville, North Carolina, and he asks, how does Facebook help you?
Well, it helps me connect with readers, and it helps me. I think with social media, you have to develop relationships and let people get to know you, and so. I love it. I have a lot of fun on social media, and I like connecting with people. And career-wise, it's great because if they're interested in you and like you, then they may be interested in your work. And you can't just promote because people just tune out. But if you can give them something authentic, it's great when I had health issues this year. Don't you hate it when people don't look like their author picture? Guys, I'm sorry. This is my my head on chemo. And by the way, my prognosis is really good. I'm going to be fine. But when I was first diagnosed and I decided to be public about it, I just got so much love back from social media, which is, has a reputation of being snarky and mean, but I was really embraced and supported, and I really felt it. So it's helped me in that way, and it's great for my career. I think most of my Facebook friends are buying my books. So thanks, guys. Thanks, Mike.
Excellent. And this is from Stephen Campbell. It says, what was the reaction like to the long story on you in the AJC last August?
Hi, Stephen. It was really great. There was this, for those of you who don't know, the AJC did a story called Confessions of a Crime Writer, True Confessions of a Crime Writer. It was 4.5 pages. They talked to my family. They got background on me. We talked about everything. Nothing was off the table. It was an incredibly honest piece, and I got a lot of support for it. The piece talked about dyslexia. It talked about addiction. I write a character who struggles with addiction, and as I did for many years. I've been clean since 1995. Anyway, again, the support was incredible, and of course, the word got out about the series too. So it was a great piece. I was really fortunate to have it.
All right, we probably have time for a couple more, so let me grab another question for you, Amanda. How many drafts did you do before submitting your book?
Oh, good Lord. The first book, I think I did about four revisions on it. I sent it to my agent, who called and said, we love this book. Maybe we could go out with it now and get you a pretty good publisher and a few dollars. But if you're willing to work with our editorial department and make some changes, then we can get you a great publisher and a career instead. And so, I already had years in the book. I was working a whole bunch of jobs, and writing whenever I could, and I thought, well, you know, what the heck, what's another year going to do? So I revised it, and they called and said they loved the revision, and it went to, I think it went to auction about a week later, and Random House was the high bidder, and I was very fortunate to end up with one of the greatest editors in the business, who was Kate Misiak at Bantam Books. And then my second book had to be revised a couple of times, and the third book, revisions are where the magic happens for me. The first draft is awful. It's a shell. There's no meat on those bones. But the revisions are where it really comes to life. So I always plan on at least one, maybe two revisions.
And a follow-up question from Stephen is it getting any easier now that you have a few books under your belt?
I assume that Stephen means writing, and no. Writing's just hard. I mean, I still have to tie myself to the chair sometimes. I still have to really focus to have the discipline to do it. I think that's the biggest challenge for most writers, even if you have a voice and something to say. On the other hand, I've gained a lot of confidence in the process of writing, and I trust the process more. I believe more than I did that I can sit down and write the story and complete the story, whatever it is. And when I finished the first book, I thought I'd never write another book. So I thought it was a fluke. So I guess in some ways it's gotten easier.
And this is from, I'm probably going to pronounce the name wrong, Jean McGill, maybe? McGill? She said, sending good thoughts from Portland, and you look great. So I'm going to mention that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we have time for one more. Will you tell about your experience learning to read?
Sure, yeah. Like I said, I was 22 when I was diagnosed, and by a psychologist who gave me a lot of things to do to help me learn to read. She thought puzzles and things like that would help. She also started using the Orton Gillingham method, which was really the thing that taught me to read. And it was hard at first. When I felt like I was ready for that first book of long text, I went to a librarian, the original search engine, and said, what would you read if you just started reading today? And she recommended Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice. Mm-hmm. So I took this little book and worked on it for, I think it was about 3 months. It was hell. And it was, oh my God, it was such a hard book. But I began to grasp the story and feel all this tension that she created around class and family and love and all the tricks they can all play. And so it was, that book changed my life, and I'll never read it again. I still hate it, but it was a game changer for me. Sorry, Jane Austen fans. I know she's fabulous, but it was very hard. I haven't forgiven the book for the torture it put me through yet.
That's great. With that, we have reached our time for tonight for this Book Talk Nation chat. But before I let everyone go, I do want to remind you again that Amanda's latest book, Don't Talk to Strangers, as well as the two previous Key Street books, Stranger in the Room and The Stranger You Seek, are all available right here on the Book Talk Nation page, right next to the video window. You can also buy them at booktalknation.com. She's signing and personalizing all the copies that are purchased here through booktalknation.com, and then Doug's bookstore, local Georgia bookstore, Eagles Eagle Eye Books. We'll be shipping those right to your door. Now, if you'd like the signed and personalized copy, you're going to want to make sure you get that order in by tomorrow night at midnight Eastern Time. That is when the sales will close for the signed and personalized copies. So I want to thank everyone who joined us. Thank you for all of your great questions. And a very big thank you to Doug and Amanda for joining us tonight.
Jennifer, thank you so much. This is so great. You know, I'm in my home office barefoot and connecting with people. So, you know, how great is that?
Yes. Excellent.
Doug,
I'm so glad that you were able to join us. I think all your fans are going to be very happy to have the chance to see you and to chat with you tonight.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Chuck, as well.
Bye, y'all.
And everybody have a great evening.
Okay. Good night. Thanks,
Night.
guys.